Hey guys, what's going on? It is Sola the Legend here with my daily mental health check-in, day number 27. Woo woo! On day number 27 now for Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is a pre-recorded check-in. It's about 11:40 a.m. Eastern Time. I am still on my vacation in New York. We are packed up, ready to leave this Airbnb and head upstate New York now, where my family lives. And so, yeah, if you watched my live yesterday, you know I was not feeling good yesterday. I did prevail. My body held up, so I was so grateful that that little rest that I stopped to take for a couple of hours enabled me to push through and get to Times Square. My girls so enjoyed that. We were in Times Square during the thick of all the action. There were thousands of people there. Ooh, it was crazy. It was. I said that things had settled down post pandemic, maybe during the day, but that nightlife, no, it was more than I remembered. It was actually worse. So, or better, or if you like crowds, better. If you don't like crowds, worse. But people were out in full force, and it was a lot of fun. And I was very grateful that my body served me well enough to get there. Because if you didn't see yesterday, I was just talking about the fact that I have lupus, arthritis, and fibromyalgia, and I was in a flare up yesterday, and I really needed to stop and rest, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to push through to see all of the tourist attractions that we had planned for today. So just like with my mental health, with my physical health, dealing with those ailments, I have to listen to my body, and I have to know. I talked to you guys the other day about managing stress. If you have any kind of physical illness, part of managing stress is also managing pain. It is managing that chronic condition. I have chronic conditions, so they're not things that are going to go away. So, there are supplements and things that I can do to make it better, but it's something that I will always have to live with. And so I have to manage that pain. It's just part of managing my life is managing pain and managing chronic conditions and knowing when to rest. And so I had a lot planned yesterday, but I had to stop and take a rest. But taking that rest in the middle of the day, even though it was just sitting in Central Park for a couple of hours, I think for just 2 hours, I just sat still. And that enabled me to push through and do the rest of the night. So it was great. It works physically, mentally, emotionally sometimes. In the middle of the day, you just got to stop and give yourself a break, however you can do that. And I know that might be difficult if you're a stay at home mom and you have little kids at home or you're on a job, but find ways to give yourself relief, whether it's physical relief, whether you need to mentally decompress, emotionally decompress, physically decompress. Find ways to give yourself those little breaks during the day. I would say if you were on a job, I work from home now, but when I did have a job and I was feeling physically overwhelmed at work, I couldn't leave, obviously, but I would just slow my work pace down. I might slow down my work pace, and you don't want to not work when you're at work 'cause that's a lack of integrity. But I would slow my pace down, maybe take a little extra long bathroom break if I needed to. There were still ways that I could catch those brief moments of reprieve for myself physically, mentally, or emotionally. And if it was really bad, I would just have to leave for the day. I tell them I wasn't feeling well and take a 2 hour lunch break. There are ways to work around it, but you have to be open and honest and transparent with those who are in your life so they can help you. So if you're dealing with some type of mental health condition or chronic illness, just let your superiors know, this is what I'm dealing with. You can show them the medical proof and just tell them, sometimes I need to do this to prevent myself from taking a day off tomorrow. If you'll allow me to have this 2 hour break, and I can make up for it by doing extra work, taking some of the work home, whatever. I don't know what kind of job you have, but whatever you can work out with them, if you're just transparent, and that's part of what I was talking about yesterday, the transparency of what you're dealing with so that your support system can be a proper support. You know, your superiors at work can be a support system for you mentally, emotionally, and physically for no matter what you're dealing with. But you have to be transparent and you got to be humble. You have to humble yourself and say, this is what the issue is, and these are my coping mechanisms. Is there a way that you can work with me so that I can continue to manage stress, manage pain, manage this illness, and be a productive employee? And that's going to work best for them and you, right? It behooves them. It's to their benefit if you're at your peak performance, right? So whatever is going to help you be at peak performance on your job, just let them know, or in your household. You know, help your support system actually support you by letting them know what you need. Now, here's a caveat to that. You can't let somebody know what you need if you don't know, right? So you need to know what you need before you can let somebody else know what you need. So the caveat to that is self-awareness, and I've been talking about that all month. This is the Feel It to Heal It month, right? I've been talking about that all month. I didn't say it every day, but these next couple of days as I close this month out, I want to remind you that this is the Feel It to Heal It month. And you need to feel all of your emotional pain, your mental pain, your physical pain. I want you to feel all of it so you can heal it. What you can't heal, I want you to feel it so that you can create coping mechanisms, coping systems, support systems, management regimens and routines that are going to help you get through life, right? Because some things you just have to make peace with. There are some things you can't heal. And I love to use this analogy. I actually wrote it in my book, Suicidal Love, The Kiss That Shattered Your Soul. If you don't have that book, please get that book. You can get it on my website at soulah.me, 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 SOULAH.me. The Kiss is Suicidal Love, The Kiss That Shattered My Soul. It's an amazing book that deals with mental health. It's my personal memoir about my mental health journey, my suicidal depression, toxic relationships, how my mental health played into toxic relationship patterns, the PTSD, all of that. Amazing, 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 amazing book. But in the book, one of the things that I talk about, I'm pretty sure I'll talk about it in that book. I've written so much. I hope that it is in this book. But I talk about when you're assessing emotional wounds, understanding the difference between something that can be healed or rectified and something that you're just going to have to learn to make peace with and work around. And the analogy that I use physically to help people understand that is the difference between a broken leg and an amputated leg, right? If you have a broken leg can be healed. You have to go into rehab, you wear a cast, you do rehab, you may be in a wheelchair for a little while, but the prognosis is good that you'll make a full or almost full recovery when you have a broken leg. And so the goal is to make a full recovery, to do everything you need to do to get full function and use back out of that broken leg, right? But if your leg has been amputated, there's no recovery from that. You can't recover an amputated limb. So now you have to create a workaround because you can still live a full and functional life, but you're not going to grow that leg back, right? And so, whether it's life in a wheelchair or getting a prosthetic or walking on crutches, whatever you have to do. Sorry, something weird happened with my sound. So you're not going to get that leg back. So it's really, really important that if you think about that analogy emotionally, let's apply it to emotional wounds. Some emotional wounds are like a broken leg. Or they might be a little bit more serious than that, but it's something that's fixable, right? It's something that you can rehab. It's something that's going to heal. So if you have the flu, that eventually heals, right? But if you have something like COPD, that's a chronic lung disease. That is not going to heal. You will have to manage that for the rest of your life unless you receive a miraculous healing. But if you have the flu, you'll recover from, or pneumonia, you'll recover from that, right? So you go into rehab and you can recover from that. So it's understanding the difference, just like physically, some things are chronic, long term, incurable emotional uh, diseases or injuries or disabilities. And then some things are temporary injuries that can be rehabbed and you will eventually fully recover from. And so you have to make that assessment of yourself emotionally and know where you're at. And that's why I say you got to feel it to heal it. You need to feel it to understand what's going on with you. Are you are you dealing with something emotionally that you're just going to have to accept and make peace with and create workarounds and pain management and support systems for, or are you dealing with something that you can fully recover from? And should the focus be rehab and recovery and getting back to full functionality? It's really important to know the difference. um, like me getting raped when I was a little girl. I was raped when I was 2. That's like some kind of emotional amputation, right? That goes deep into the core of who you are, to be raped and molested during those foundational years before you even understand what's happening, can process it, can try to heal. I grew up with that. That grew with me, and it's just a part of me. And so that's something that I have to create workarounds for and management for, which I have. I've done well with that. I've made peace with that. But other things like I'm trying to think of some other things. Maybe like getting into some kind of altercation with my kids, or some tension with my children. That's something that you can heal and you recover from. Um, a relationship, a friendship breakup, if it was a casual friendship, important to you, but kind of casual, and it ended in a messy way, you usually can rehab and recover from that. So I feel like most emotional wounds you can rehab and recover from, but there are some things, some traumas that happen to you in a life that emotionally disfigure you. They disable you. Or they like to call those people now differently abled, right? You're differently able. You're still able, but you're able differently. So if your leg is amputated, you can't walk like everybody else, but you can still walk. Or you can't get around like everybody else, but you can still get around. And so even when you have the emotional disfigurement or some kind of differently abling kind of emotional trauma, it doesn't mean that you can't still live a fully functional life. It might be a little bit harder, and that's something that you're just going to have to make peace with. Something that traumatic happens, death is traumatic. If your parents have died, your spouse, somebody real close to you, like a sibling that was, just almost like the air you breathe. If you have some kind of severe physical disability or disfigurement, losing a child, there are some things that emotionally traumatize and devastate you, and you will never fully recover from that. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. And you have to make peace with that. It doesn't mean that you can't live a fully functional and happy life. You're just going to have to learn how to work around that pain, and live differently, move differently, right? You're going to move differently because you will be moving with a pain that you're going to carry with you. But it doesn't mean you have to carry it at the forefront of your mind. It doesn't have to be the most prevalent and important part of your life, right? It doesn't have to dictate all of your movements and your relationships and all of your emotions and experience. You don't have to filter your life through that trauma or those traumas. You don't have to filter your life through trauma. Just like a disabled person doesn't have to filter their whole life through the disability. They make peace with it. They create a life for themselves that works for them. And then it just becomes a thing like, oh, yeah, I'm in a wheelchair. Oh, yeah, I don't have my leg. Oh, yeah, I have, COPD or asthma, or like in my case, lupus, arthritis, fibromyalgia. I make the adjustments that I need to make, but it's not the most important, prevalent part of my life. I don't think about it every day. I don't harp on it every day. When I encounter physical episodes or flare ups, as I call them, I just deal with it. And it's the same thing with the bipolar disorder. When it flares up, I deal with it. When an episode is coming on, I deal with it. When PTSD is coming on, I deal with it. These are things that I'm just living with. Some of it I will recover from, some of it I won't. And that's part of feeling it to heal it. It's evaluating yourself and really understanding, diagnosing yourself, really diagnosing yourself. Is this a chronic emotional wound? Or is this something that I can rehab and recover? Right? That's just coming to me right now. I never actually used that term before, but I think it's a really good term. Can I rehab and recover, or do I need to focus more on pain management and support systems? Okay. So that's part of what feeling it to heal it is. And I started this off, I'm off the cuff today as usual, but I started this off talking about helping your support system support you. You have to let them know what you need, but that starts with you knowing what you need. And part of you knowing what you need is going to be doing the self work to evaluate the severity of your emotional wounds and the source of those wounds. Where did this come from? How did it happen? Can I completely rehab and recover from this? Or is this going to make me differently abled emotionally going forward? Either way, the goal is to live a fully functional life, a happy life, a whole life. Loss, grief, trauma, mental illness, physical illness, disfigurement, any type of chronic illness. It doesn't mean your life is over. It means your life is going to be a little different. It might be a little bit more challenging at times, but it's not over. It doesn't have to be a life full of pain and sadness. It just doesn't. And I know this for a fact. I've been living with chronic pain since I was a little girl. I've been living with chronic pain since I was 8 years old, and I'm almost 48. So we're talking 40 years, 4 decades, okay? 4 decades of living with chronic pain. I'm telling you, it doesn't mean that your life is over. I fought back. They told me I was going to spend my life in a wheelchair. I fought back. So, the little hour and a half that I spent in a wheelchair yesterday in the museum so that I could give my leg a little bit of a rest. It's okay. For the last 40 years, I was supposedly gonna spend my whole life in a wheelchair. So every once in a while I gotta rest my legs, because for 40 years they've been going against the grain and walking for me when they were told they wouldn't work. I'm okay with that. That's part of my pain management. I got to be okay with that. I have to make peace with that. So these are things that you have to make peace with. If sometimes that PTSD or whatever you're dealing with, the anxiety, as you're working to get stronger, because here's the thing, I have lupus, but lupus doesn't have me. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but it's true. I remember this. Oh, I never told this story before. I talked about me being diagnosed and how they said I was going to be in a wheelchair. I have talked about that, but I haven't talked about this. During that time, my mother had a friend. We went to a church where the church member was diagnosed the same time as me. We both got sick around the same time, and we were diagnosed with the same disease, and we got the same prognosis, life in a wheelchair. I rejected that prognosis. I refused it. They offered me a wheelchair, tried to put me in it, and I said no. It was so painful to walk, but I said if I have to crawl, as long as my legs are working, you will not put me in that chair, because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a chair. She accepted the chair. I did not accept the chair. And I saw her, I think about, I want to say like 10, 15 years later. And she had been in that wheelchair ever since. And she's still in it to this day. Actually, I think she died. I think she died a few years ago, from the disease. But she spent the rest of her life in that wheelchair, some 30 plus years, because she accepted that as her outcome and I did not. I fought, and although I was never completely healed from lupus, meaning that it always still shows up in my blood, I did not give in to the prognosis that they gave me, that I was going to be on medicine for the rest of my life, in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. They told me that I would never be able to have kids. Every time I had a baby, they like, you need to stop. You're going to die with the next one, or your baby's going to be deformed, or what. Mm-mm. I defied all of that. So I want you to think about that emotionally. And maybe that's why I recover, or I have thrived through trauma the way that I have. Because when people hear my life story, they're amazed. They're like, how are you okay? There's a fighter in me, there's a rebel in me. I'm not going to just give in to what other people say about how I should turn out because of what happened to me, what's happening to me. I'm going to fight for the best possible outcome. And I can't undo what's been done, and I can't heal what can't be healed, right? I have to accept the fact that I have a chronic illness. I have to accept the fact that I was raped. I have to accept the fact that I'm divorced. These are things that I have to accept, but I don't have to accept the status quo prognosis that goes along with it. I don't have to accept the probability or the likelihood that I'm going to end up this, that, or the other because of those things, right? And I didn't accept that. I fought. And I need you to understand it. Just because someone has died or left you, or you've been hurt, raped, maybe you're adopted, your parents left you, whatever. Just because you have this, whatever it is that's going on, this trauma, this tragedy, this trial, it doesn't mean that you can't triumph. In the midst of trauma, tragedy, and trial, you can still triumph. In the midst of trauma, tragedy, and trial, you can still triumph. You know, Come on, I just came up with all that alliteration right there. And so I just want to be an example to you. I want you to hear me, that even with all of the traumas that I've suffered and with the physical ailments that I've suffered, I don't ever accept defeat. I fight with everything in me to get the best possible outcome. And there will be limitations. And yesterday I was feeling kind of down because I hit one of those limitations yesterday. I wanted to do so much with my girls so they would have a full experience in New York, but there were some things I had to take off the schedule because my body was like, you know, and I had to use wisdom because I was pushing my body too hard. I'm grateful that it still works for me, and I have to respect when it says I need a rest now, right? And I hated that limitation, and it made me feel a little sad that I had that limitation. But then I was proud of myself, and I celebrated myself, and I was kind to myself. Like, don't feel sad about that. You did amazing. You're doing amazing. You walking around, your girls are here, you stayed out all day, you gave all of yourself, you gave everything that you could. You're doing amazing, and you still loved yourself enough to care for yourself and stop when you needed to, rest when you needed to, got the support when you needed it. You did amazing, girl. Don't be upset, don't be sad. You did wonderful. So you got to talk to yourself like that. You have to talk to yourself like that. So I triumphed through that trial yesterday, and I hated the limitations, but I love that I was aware of them, self-aware enough to understand those limitations and respect those limitations. Because guess what? I push my body too hard and I go down, then I'm gonna be depressed. So I'll be fighting physical illness and mental illness. Hello, I'll be down both ways. Um, and so yeah, guys. So that's just what came out today. That's what came out. So I don't want to keep you guys. It's 12 o'clock. I don't want to keep myself. I got to get out of here. But I love you guys so much. This is Soul Out of Legend in honor of mental health awareness. I've been doing these live check-ins every single day. Today is May 27th. It is the 27th straight day that I have done these live check-ins every single night, made my daily reels, and it's been my pleasure to be here for you all. I hope you are benefiting from it. We got a couple of more days to go in this month, so make the most of these last days of Mental Health Awareness Month to launch a lifestyle of mental health awareness. Don't let this just be something you do this month, but I really want you to spend these last couple of days of May thinking about how this can become your lifestyle. All right. I love you guys. Until next time, remember, this is Soul Out of Legend, and only you